Magic is found in every room, where people connect over a shared purpose. Luke, Hannah and Chris explore the role of purpose, courage, mindset and culture in every leader's quest for transformational performance.
Hello and welcome to Magic in the Room. I'm Hannah Broderud.
I'm Chris Province.
And I'm Luke Freeman. And this season 6, we are kind of going back to our topical approach and talking about things that are top of mind. We've had some good conversations so far, but the big news is today is our first episode in our new podcast studio
Check this
here
out.
in Bixby, USA.
That's right.
So if you're watching on a clip or YouTube or whatever, this is kind of exciting. It's kind of fun. We have our own space here.
It's pretty cool. It's my first time here. I'm back visiting Oklahoma, South Tulsa suburb.
Yeah, South Tulsa life.
Yeah. Well, I really like what you've done with the place, Luke.
Yeah.
It looks great.
Yeah, all it's missing is air conditioning.
Yeah.
We are on site in Oklahoma in July with no air conditioning.
Yeah, but that's okay. We're going to make it through.
Yes.
So, topics. We have talked about how to lead in times of uncertainty. Here we are, middle of 2025, about exactly halfway through the middle of the year. There continues to be uncertainty since we recorded that episode. And as we were talking through what might be relevant, this word came up for us, which is cynicism. And we've done episodes on hope versus cynicism before. And just to recap a little bit, we'll talk about hope at the beginning of this. But my big question for you all today is when is hope not enough? Or is there a certain quality or strength of hope that isn't enough when you're in times that feel like the culture really is steeped in cynicism? So that's what we're going to talk about today. I'm really curious you all's take on this. We've talked pretty optimistically in the past, I feel like, about how leaders can be agents of hope and how each of us can kind of get agency and move our organizations and really our world forward if we're intentional on the hope recipe. But I don't know, for myself, I'm having some questions about that. Is it too simplistic? Is it not enough? How can we in good faith tell people, oh, just buck up and live purposefully and, whatever, when so much around us feels to be just every day is about cynicism. And it's about, there's a lot of people that feel like are leading nihilistic lives as individuals and also as leaders. So that's what we're going to dig into today. So to start us out, Hannah, could you give us a reminder, refresh on hope? What have we talked about? What is the hope recipe? And then, we'll go from there.
Yeah. So hope is the belief that tomorrow can be better than today and that I have the power to make it so. So that requires 3 things. It requires a vision for a better future. What does a better tomorrow look like? So that has to be an inspiring vision. That's our goal. And then you have to have a pathway to get there. So you need to know what is the plan, right? You got to have your vision or your goal and then your plan for how you're going to get there. And then the third component of that is agency. That's that belief in my power and our collective power to make a difference. And if we are missing that belief, we're not even going to get into the ring to even try to make a difference. So that's really, I think if you're missing the agency piece, if it feels like nothing you do is ever going to make a difference, that's often when we get jaded and cynical.
Yeah. And maybe that's where I am feeling is this too simplistic? Because I don't want to undersell how hard it is to have agency and to feel like I actually have the power to make tomorrow better. And when we think about nationally, politically, when we think about in organizations that are kind of chronically cynical places or kind of nihilistic places, I just put my head down, do my job, get through the day. I don't I don't want us to just say, well, like, what's your vision for a better tomorrow? Great, make a plan, do it. And then all you have to do is just believe hard enough and have agency
Mm.
and you'll be okay. And so, Chris, I'm curious from your perspective, like paint me a picture of whether it's a climate you're involved in right now, in an organization or experiences you've had. Like, what does it feel like whenever agency is hard to come by in
Mm.
this recipe?
Yeah, a lot to unpack here. Um, I guess I want to start by naming that I'm going to share some internal thoughts around like these hallmarks of hope. They seem super rational
Mm-hmm.
and super intelligent. And I think about like what is an intelligent organization or an intelligent person, and there's all these hallmarks, right? Like an intelligent person, like they have the discipline to listen. There's a sense that they're in tune with other people the same way in an organization that's working well, the people are in tune with one another. There's this sense of they're nimble, like the person is nimble, the organization is nimble. There's this value of measurement and being specific about the things that are happening or that we observe. There's communication that's taking place that is, bidirectional and not unilateral. There's a testing of a vision that is this vision appropriate? Is it worthy to aspire towards? In intelligent people, intelligent organizations understand their biases. They question what it is we believe and why we believe them. And this whole idea of operating in a way that we can be confidently courageous,
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
and we do have that agency. Um, but those are intelligent and rational things. And we know not every organization and not every person can be that.
Mm-hmm.
So, would then it make sense that the cynical organization and the cynical leader or the cynical person would maybe be void of some of those key markers that allow for hope?
Mm.
And so, when it's like, well, when is hope not enough? All those things that are rational don't help when you are in an irrational situation.
Hmm.
When you have to beat back cynicism, how can you beat back something that is irrational with rational thought?
Mhm.
I mean, at some level, you have to move from being progressive towards that goal to just beating back the opposition because they're opposition. That's my take on it.
Yeah. So as you were talking, just this image came to mind of like, oh, yeah, I've been telling people to take a scalpel into a room where people are fighting with baseball bats.
Right. That's that's effectively the long and short of it. Like you're going to be on the wrong end of that equation. And I think that's why the cynics conversation and understanding the cynics goal is to create more cynicism. It's to drown out the hopeful practices that promise a better tomorrow. Like if I can smother those, I can protect my status quo.
Mm-hmm.
So, what it feels like when you're the one trying to lead change in an organization, and I generically say when the nays have it,
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
when you're on the minority side and you're the hopeful person trying to progress the situation for a community or organization, it's what it feels like is taking that deep breath, strapping on the armor, and walking into that organization to do the work every day, day after day, until you can chip away at whatever the structures are that are in place, whatever the beliefs are that are in place, until you can knock those down enough to take back the majority. And that's the thing about cynicism is it doesn't require the majority to create the culture.
Mm-hmm.
So the nays have it may only mean 35% of the people have this approach, but the
Well, the right
weight of
one
it,
person,
right?
right? I mean, there's this whole power dynamic piece of it too. If the right one person is a cynic, I think it's pretty easy for people to say, like, what can I actually do?
And so, just to that piece, I want to read this out and have both of you kind of respond to this idea. But isn't there a gap when you think about cynicism and being the hopeful in the midst of that? Doesn't that highlight this idea that there can be a gap between what the system allows me to be and what the system wants me to be? Because I can remain hopeful and I can put the armor on every day and I can keep chipping away at the powers that be and the structures that exist to fight for that better tomorrow, even though the system wants me to shut it down.
Hmm.
It allows me to continue to fight. It allows me to continue to show up and, model from just my team,
Hmm.
model to just my shift, model to only the people that I have influence over until such time I can expand that effect. But I'm interested in your take on that idea of, is there a gap between what the system I'm in allows me to be and what the system I'm in wants me to be?
It's a big question. Um, so I'm thinking about this at a national level. I see a lot of cynicism right now. It's July 2025 when we're recording this, and I wrote some personal reflections recently about becoming American and choosing to become a citizen of this nation right now during this very kind of turbulent time. And so I think about like that system, right? What does that system want me to be? And what does that system allow me to be? Well, up until recently, and I still don't have my application approved. I have an appointment in August to get, my interview and take my test and all of that. So we'll see how that goes. But I don't have the right to vote in this country. So the system hasn't really allowed me to participate in that way. Sure, I can participate. I pay my taxes. I care about the community that I'm part of and the people that are around me. But there's certain things that I haven't been allowed to do that I now maybe I've been a little cynical personally about American politics. And because I was outside of that system, I didn't feel like I really had a voice, so I just kind of tuned out, right? And so I'm taking a step now so this is my take on that. Like I'm choosing to join the system so that I can do what it allows me to do, which is exercise my right to vote, become more engaged in civic and public decisions. Um, Even though I feel like that system wants me to just shut down and just put my blinders on.
Yeah. I think there are a lot of systems that we exist in, a lot of organizations and political systems, whatever, that there's all sorts of pressure. Like the homeostasis is for us to do do what we are supposed to do, consume, right? If you think about the US economic system, and political system in a lot of ways, like what everyone wants is for us to be consumers. But the system allows more than that. It allows us to become involved, advocate, move things. And I think, let me take that down to like a small business, even. I've had experiences where the system or the small business might want me to stay in the lanes, get my deliverables done, do my job, don't make waves. But when I understand the boundaries of what it will allow me to do, like the more I understand where the edges are, the more freedom I actually have and the more agency I actually have to bring my own agenda to bear. And I think for a lot of folks listening, and I think we've probably all been in this scenario, what it will allow us to do is probably right up to the edge of like where it becomes more costly from a time or financial perspective to keep us employed than to replace us.
Mm-hmm.
So, one thing that people underestimate, I think, is that change is expensive. And usually your employer would prefer not to make a change. Now, we might have folks that come in and say, oh, I'm going to turn over this team, or I really am going to take this next performance eval cycle and clean out some people or whatever. But those are outliers, right? For the most part, people are safer than they think they are inside their organization.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for the folks that learn to throw around what they are allowed to do in excess of what they are expected to do or maybe hoped that they would do, those folks can be pretty effective, I think.
Well, and they build their skill sets, they build their muscles, and are hugely valuable to any organization because they
Mhm.
can move it from the inside.
Mm-hmm.
This is there a function of, regardless of what system we're a part of, the peace of mind for any person like that comes to be from doing the best of which we're capable.
Mm-hmm.
When we accept what the system wants us to be, we're somehow violating a moral obligation there to do the best of which we're capable. What are your thoughts on, like, where do you source the peace of mind from if you're in a system that doesn't allow there, maybe you feel like you can't? How can you find peace of mind in that system?
It de- it depends on what system we're talking about and what kind of system we're in. But yeah, if the and I do see examples of that both in business and on a larger scale, that there is this sense, and that's really kind of where jadedness and cynicism comes from, is yeah, but I can't do anything about it. I'm not allowed. Or I if I speak up or take action, there may be consequences. And I don't know if I want to suffer those consequences.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, so what do you do? I mean, I think it comes down to belief, it comes down to value. Like, what do I believe? Do I want to make an impact? And if and to me, it always does come back to agency. Do I feel like, despite what this system is pushing towards, which is status quo, homeostasis, keeping everything the same, don't make waves, don't stir the pot, don't rock the boat, whatever metaphor you want to use.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but do I believe, A, that I can make an impact, and am I willing to do what it takes? I don't know.
Yeah.
And there's costs to that too, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, as we're talking about this, part of me keeps coming back to awareness is always helpful. Self awareness and awareness of the situation I find myself in is always helpful, whether that's understanding what the bounds of what this organization, this company, this job, whatever it is, this role in my family, whether it's understanding where the boundaries are and awareness there, whether it's awareness of the choice that I have around, am I going to take action on this item or am I not? Awareness creates agency.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we've all known times that we caved to something that we wanted. We said,
Mhm.
now's not the right time, or I give up, or I don't have the power to make a change.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to let that one die. And I guess that brings me to this question of like, what is letting go in a healthy way that's really aware of my limits, and what's giving up when maybe I could have been more courageous, or I could have been more authentic, or I could have been more willing to pay the costs for something that I believed was worth our team's energy or worth focus or worth whatever, right? So this idea of letting go or giving up, is this
Mm.
just semantics? Is this a branding
No,
problem, or
no.
is it something else?
I think it's letting go is in the way I process it. Letting go is intentional.
Mm-hmm.
There's a benefit to me, an identified benefit to me
Mm-hmm.
of letting go. If I let it go, it will give this an opportunity to emerge. If letting go, I can observe something differently. If letting go, I can do something that's more valuable.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
It whereas giving up, like I like there can never be peace of mind if that's the framing you use in a situation
Mm-hmm.
where you've stopped delivering effort or pushing resource and energy towards a solution. I think letting go is intentional and strategic and is always okay.
Yeah.
Even if it's, you know, I find myself in a system where the energy I have to put forth to change it,
Mm-hmm.
um, that energy has a better return to me focused elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Or if there's an intentional decision to say, hey, I'm going to now transact versus try to transform. I'm going to mentally accept the transaction that I'm choosing to make. And for a season, because maybe I have other determining factors in my life
Mm-hmm.
that allows me to say, look, like I'm going to transact in this space for these reasons, and I'm going to let go of X, Y, and Z. And it might be for a season, but I know what's required for now.
Yeah.
But that's still intentional.
Right.
It's not like I can do that with peace of mind, knowing why I'm doing it, why I'm letting go.
Yeah. We talk a lot about intentional leadership, right? And that is an act of intentional leadership. And to quote our good friend Steve Laswell, one of the most impactful things I've heard him say over the years is leadership is letting go of control in order to gain influence. So you're letting go of the need to control an outcome or another person or a situation. And we've talked about this on the podcast before too. A need for control is a need to feel safe. But if I'm intentionally choosing to give up that control, that means I'm somewhat vulnerable, right?
Mm-hmm.
I am choosing to let go of my need to feel safe by controlling this situation because I believe there's a greater outcome. I can wield influence differently when I'm not holding on so tight.
Luke, a couple of things that have kind of crossed my mind here is like even in the process of letting go, I don't have to let go of this idea that my job is to support people that need support.
Yeah.
And that feels like, especially to the cynics, like support is an endangered behavior. It's darn near an endangered word, right? It might be a little woke. Um, but speak to, if you don't mind, just how does this concept of supporting others and keeping promises, like, are those things that might be lower level lifts for strategic or intentional leaders that can give us some fuel to fight cynicism?
Yeah, well, I think this idea of letting go for a time or choosing our timing on whatever the cause is, whatever the project is, whatever our priority is that maybe we don't see a path for. Um, a lot of that is around power. And if I don't have the power right now, or I don't, we talked about what the system or what your role will allow. If my boundaries of what's allowed don't include this agenda I have, okay, how do I change my boundaries? How do I expand my influence? so that I can revisit this in 6 months or a year or 5 years? And I think that work of gaining influence is very much around, how do I keep the promises that I make to people? How do I show up every day with a spirit of supporting my team, supporting the stakeholders that I'm responsible to and for, and being people that are accountable, like being an accountable person in a world that has a real scarcity of accountable people
Mhm.
will increase, in most cases, the influence that we have.
Mm.
I think the other thing is like our biggest lever is always ourselves. So if I don't have the power right now to affect the change that I want to have, okay, well, what do I need to learn or what do I need to do to become someone that can take more authority, that can take more power? And it might be I need to be a better communicator. It might mean I need to respond faster. It might mean that I need to go learn some sort of technical skill that I don't have right now. Or, hey, maybe I need to go to a different organization,
Mm.
right? But what is it that I can do to increase the influence that I have?
Yeah. And that's, I think, outside of being, we can always certainly be aggressive and match the energy of the cynic,
Yeah.
right? And try to create some forceful gap for
Mhm.
hope to exist. We can also take, these less aggressive measures of always keep my promises. Because
Mhm.
if it's one thing about cynics, they're not typically highly accountable.
Mm.
They're not typically people or leaders that move organizations forward. Status quo is the best possible outcome,
Mhm.
which you still have atrophy. So, if I can be the accountable one, if I can be the communicator, if I can be the supporter, then I'm really leveraging myself in opposition and as a champion of hope. Um, just it's a little bit less aggressive than just straight matching their energy.
Yeah. Yeah. So this idea of power in the fight of hope versus cynicism. Another suspicion I have, and we've already started pulling the thread on it, is that in previous conversations around this, again, we were saying, like, hey, here's the scalpel for how you build plans of hope, how you become a leader that builds hope. And I don't think the technicals are wrong, right? Vision for a better tomorrow, clear plan and pathway to get there, and then the agency and the power to execute your plan. But I don't know that we've given time to when it's like, okay, you understand the technicals, you know what it takes. And oftentimes you need to go from a little arm wrestling competition to build hope in your organization to like you said earlier, putting on the armor. Like it might be a real conflict.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that came up as we were talking about this before recording was matching energy. And if the energy of the cynics, whether that's someone with power who's a cynic in our organization, or whether that is a group of people that have kept us from moving forward because 60% of the folks around me are taking a cynical or a nihilistic approach to what's possible with our organization. If their energy is a 10, I have an option on the table
Mm-hmm.
that I don't think we've talked about, which is for me to take my energy to a 10 and be a little bit more comfortable with direct conflict around we are going to create some hope. We are going to move forward. We are going to go take that hill.
Mm-hmm.
Who's with me? And maybe I lose the battle. Maybe I lose my job. Maybe I lose whatever, but I care enough about this that I'm going to match the energy and bring the energy and the ambition that is required to move this forward. I can make that choice in the same way that I can make the letting go choice.
Yeah, what I see most frequently is that we'll take a standard team of 12 people,
Mm-hmm.
and there's one loud cynic and two supporters of the loud cynic. but there's only one champion of hope, and everyone else is passive. And they stare and they wait for who's going to win this battle for the middle. And in those situations, like if that champion of hope needs to go to a 10 to win the middle, like that's the battleground. You're not really trying to move the cynic, you're trying to move the middle and all those passives.
Mm-hmm.
But there's something really powerful about naming our principles and what we allow to happen within our communities, whether that's a work community, a city community, church community, whatever, our families, naming what we allow to happen and like pulling everyone in to making a moral judgment on the behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Because we belong to those who know us. You know, I want that cynic talking negatively about me. That's the point. Because the people that know me know I'm not that. And when that person is getting loud and taking that contraposition, it gives me the permission to form the syndicate. I belong to the people who know me. We belong to the people who know us. And those lines have to be drawn. And I think maybe that's way more important than the volume, is to make sure that the battle lines are drawn around the principles and the way in which we engage in this community. What is permissible? And if there's a syndicate that says that is not how we behave and cynicism is not okay and it can't overrun our organization, and there's a group that says, oh, yes, it is, we're not changing, it's okay to have it out.
Yeah. I also think about, sometimes we recognize that we got to pick our battles, that not every hill is worth dying on. And maybe that's the letting go part that comes in. But as someone it's in my nature to match energy with whoever I'm up against. Definitely younger version of me got burned a few times, right? Because I picked some battles that probably didn't need to engage with, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the older me is much slower to engage on many levels because I want to make sure that that energy is spent fruitfully and not in a foolhardy way that potentially causes more harm to myself or the system in the long run. So I think there's a balance there, right? Of like, which battles do we engage with and why? Are we clear on that? And yeah, also recognizing that there's some cost to matching energy.
Well, and
Yeah.
I think a lot of what we talked about today is like why leadership is an art and not just a science.
Yeah.
Because you have to assess the situation. You've got to understand the boundaries. You got to understand the strength of the cynic. You know, if it's one cynic standing alone, then there's no harm.
Right.
Try to figure out, limit their impact to the organization and find ways to restructure your organization in such a way that those personalities, fail to influence. Right. But it's nuanced and there's a lot of factors to consider. Like generally speaking, Luke, though, when you think about this and thinking about the conversation today, like where does all of this, like, is cynicism versus hope? Is it fundamental to a leader's journey? Is it primary? Is it secondary? Is it tertiary? Where does it reside in importance of our ability to navigate this playing field? Where does it stand?
Well, I mean, one reason I'm interested to have the conversation is everything in me, everything I'm reading in the news, everything I'm hearing from leaders and organizations, everything I'm seeing with young leaders is making me feel like the conversation around how do we lead in a world that is cynical and where nihilism is a real temptation, that conversation is more important now than it was a year ago, and way more important than it was 5 years ago, and way more important than it was 10 years ago. And so to me, this has become a central thing that I'm thinking about of, you know, I don't want us, and by us, I mean the three of us sitting here. I mean my family. I mean the society in which we live. I don't want us to end up at a place 5 years from now or 10 years from now where the majority of people are resigned to some sort of some default position of I don't have agency.
Mm.
I can't influence the world in which I live. I feel like we're getting further and further there. Part of it, I think, I mean, I could talk about all the trends that I think create this, whether it's, social media, right? That's the big target on the wall, right? But globalization, the breakdown of local communities, the breakdown of family communities, faith communities, the breakdown of intergenerational connection, the breakdown of organizations as social good, the movement of capital to large multinational corporations instead of organizations or businesses that have more of a tie to their local community and more of a moral imperative to give back to their local community. So I think all of these things and more are leading us to this place where, like, this is the conversation to me that has to be had. And we have to be comfortable with knowing, when am I letting go and when am I going to match the energy and bring the heat.
Mm.
And, we use this trick with clients. So if you're listening, behind the curtain here, but when we see a lack of moral intensity with a client, we'll whip out this thing to make them feel a little ashamed, I think sometimes. But basically, this idea that what I see and do nothing about is my standard.
Mm-hmm. What I tolerate is my standard.
Yeah.
What I
Yeah.
allow is my standard.
Yeah. So we've got, I think, a lot of folks out there right now that are tolerating and seeing a lot of things that they are doing nothing about.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, I think there's a lens that you could look at that through that says our standards are lowering.
Mm.
We are willing to accept more pain, self-centeredness, injustice, coarseness, lack of serving the people around us, lack of following through with the promises we make to one another. We are willing to tolerate a lower standard than what we used to be able to tolerate. And I think that's a problem. And I think the pendulum needs to be at its maximum on this and start swinging back. So I don't remember what you asked me, but
No,
those are
that's
my
it.
thoughts
Yeah.
on it. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just wondering kind of where you at on all this. Why is it an important conversation and how primary should it be for us as leaders? And I couldn't agree more and I can't say it better. So I'm going to ride there. But I think for me, this is just a conversation that we should continue.
Yeah.
And we should be able to have these conversations as leaders, as a member of leadership teams, with the people that we support every day in their career and development, kind of speaking explicitly about the power of hope and agency and defining pathways and knowing where we are, and to not give up
Mm.
on the idea that we have agency and moral imperative to create the world that we want to live in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So let me end with a final question for each of you. And that is, what is your driver to not give up? Because I know both of you. And I think both of you are agents of hope and change. I think you're effective at that with our client partners and their organizations and with our team and with your families. So why? Like what's the well of energy to keep going back at it?
I can't not believe that the future can be better. I mean, I think that's as simple as it is. Maybe that makes me naive, but that does give me hope. I think ever since I was a little kid, I've had, you know, an imagination. I loved books. I loved books because they had this ability to transport me into a different reality where I could imagine a different existence.
Mm,
And I think that's still something that I draw on today. I can imagine that things can be different. And I think when we stop imagining, stop being curious, stop thinking, what if, that's when we fall into the trap of becoming cynical and apathetic and nihilistic.
yeah.
I think, as I like to, let's tackle this a couple different ways because I think there's a real honest and human way that I can answer this, and there's a more clinical way. But since again, God bless growing up in the 80s, right? I
Mhm.
was in kindergarten in 1980,
Mhm.
and I like when I went to kindergarten, they gave me a T-shirt, and it was a blue T-shirt with a yellow smiley face, and on it said, "Happiness is being a West Side kid." Right? And then you go to school and you learn what it means to be a West Side kid. You take care of your friends, you support one another, kind hands and feet, take care of your stuff, right? Like all these things. And then grow up and you see the huge void that's there. There the massive void around support and care and love that should be there
Mm-hmm.
but does not exist.
Mm.
So where I draw from is like I want to fill that up, and I don't like the work isn't done until that void is smaller where we can start to fill that void. And until then, right, just giving whatever is left of me or giving what I can towards advancing that, and there being a peace of mind that comes from giving that as much effort as I can.
Mm.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's a good place to end. I'll read us out. Thank you, everyone, for listening today. Magic in the Room is hosted by Chris Province, Hannah Broderud, and me, Luke Freeman. It's produced by Ethan Babylon of Babylon Productions. Social media management is by Emma Holland and Maggie King Robinson. Our theme music is by Evan Grimm. You can find his music on Apple Music. This episode was recorded at the Magic in the Room studios in Bixby, Oklahoma. Magic in the Room is a production of Purpose and Performance Group. You can find us at purposeandperformancegroup.com, and you can find this and all of our previous episodes at magicintheroom.com. Reach out, live with hope, be badasses. We're out.